My name is Jen Nolte. It says so on the slide, and it's also my name. I am the User Experience Research Librarian at Yale University Library. I work in a new department. We are only about 2 years old, called Assessment and UX Research. So this presentation is very much about tools and methodology. So this is like hands-on. If you take these slides or you take great notes, you should be able to put this together when you go home to your desk this afternoon or tomorrow or whatever. That said, I am delighted to help. I'm delighted to share my slides. And if at any point, especially back row people, if you can't hear me, just let me know. I'll speak up. Okay. So the theme of this conference, I was just thinking about this, because I've given this presentation in a couple of different places. The theme of this conference is about strengthening our networks. And how do you do that? You do that through communication. That's a big way, right? What does usability testing have to do with communication? Well, when your site sucks and it doesn't work, what are you communicating? It sucks, like you suck, right? Or Yale sucks. That's not good. That's not good. Yale doesn't suck. We're great. So usability testing is so important. It's really easy to do, particularly if it's remote unmoderated usability testing. And I will tell you why in a moment. So presentation is called You Can Do It, because you can. Remote unmoderated user testing on a budget. So today we are talking about the part-time solitary UX researcher. That was me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, long time ago. We're going to talk about the constraints that kind of led to me developing this method, necessity being the mother of invention, right? What the method is, what went well with it and what didn't, and variations on the method. So, as I mentioned, I'm part of assessment and UX research at the library. We do lots of stuff. There's sort of two sides of the house: quantitative data collection and analysis and qualitative data collection and analysis. Guess which side I'm on? Qualitative, yeah, mostly, yeah. So usage statistics, quantitative. Data visualization, mostly quantitative. Dashboards, qualitative and quantitative. Usability testing, qualitative, mostly. Survey design, qualitative, mostly. Space assessment, qualitative, mostly. We do a lot. Our department has been involved in all kinds of different projects around the library, and we're still learning and growing. It's been very exciting. My director is Sarah Tedesco, assessment librarian and program director of assessment and UX research. And my colleague is library business analyst Meng Tang. And Meng is all quantitative all the time, every day, all day. She's awesome. And that is our department. So here's kind of like a timeline of how I got to the point where I kind of developed this method. So I started in library IT, and I had joined the user experience group in that department, which no longer exists. I was assisting the UX librarian in organizing guerrilla usability testing, not guerrilla like a monkey, but guerrilla like, haha, but maybe not less scary, and collecting and analyzing the results. So we would go hang out like a cafe or what have you, and with like a team of 2 to 3 people, kind of on the spot recruit people to test a particular interface, ask them a bunch of questions, and so on. Our UX librarian left in 2014, my boss at the time, so I assumed responsibility for the library's usability testing activities. But my other stuff didn't go away. So at the time, my title was Emerging Digital Services Analyst, and I supported our integrated library system. I supported our e-resource access and discovery systems. I did a bunch of other stuff. I was on the leadership team. Yeah, I had a lot going on. Eli Scholar, support that too if you want to talk to me about that feel free to take my card. Yeah, so I was doing a lot of stuff. So I needed to find a way to build this very important work, right? Because the whole goal of usability testing is make sure that your site doesn't suck and that people like, the services you're offering. How do I incorporate that very important work into the work that I already have? So I started trying to figure out how to do that in a way that didn't involve like a ton of investment of time and energy and so on. So this is sort of like, the benefits and maybe gaps between the team testing model that I was mentioning, where we would kind of hang out in cafes and be 2 to 3 people with a giant script and, hey, can you come and test with me? Versus just me alone taking on all of that work by myself. So the organizing and scheduling of staff, that's kind of a time suck in the team testing model. Training the staff, also a time suck. Debriefing the staff, kind of also a time suck. Transcription and collation of, collation of the test notes, also a time suck, but that is just going to be a time suck no matter what you do, right? That's just sort of like the core of qualitative research, right? The recruiting is easier with the team testing model and harder with the individual model. And moderating the test is also harder and a little bit dicier with the individual model, because you have to kind of wear the recruiter hat and the moderator hat and also be really engaged and tell me how you feel about that and what does that mean and all that kind of stuff. So there's just a lot more of a mental, emotional lift doing it all as one person. And then, as I pointed out, that particular row of the transcription and collating the test notes and analysis, that is always going to be something that takes a lot of time. But, I'm trying to optimize my time in any way I can. So my goal was conduct routine usability tests while minimizing the time spent moderating and recruiting. Collect quantitative data automatically from test participants during the test. So, being able to easily port whatever feedback I get from a test participant into a visualization quickly. And I also knew that visualizations are something that my colleagues would respond to. And given that the usability testing program is still somewhat young and not that ubiquitous, I had the job of kind of trying to introduce this methodology and the results of that to the library and to my colleagues. So visualizations were important, so I needed that quantitative data. Hey, look at that, it's 2 slides. So I started looking around at platforms that promised, we do it all for you for a fee. We will do the testing, we'll do the recruiting, we'll do the analysis, we'll put the bells and the whistles and the heat maps and the everything else and the survey questions all into one platform, and you just give us your money and it'll be fine, right? So I looked into it. Usertesting.com was the first platform that I looked at. It's an enterprise usability. How many people have heard of usertesting.com? Yeah, okay. It's an enterprise web usability testing platform. It facilitates remote unmoderated user testing. It maintains a wide roster of on-call test participants that they pay. There are analytics built into the platform that can provide sort of more quantitative information about how people are moving around. So like I said, heat maps, are they mousing all over this one thing? Are they clicking on stuff that isn't clickable? That kind of thing. On staff review panels, so they employ a bunch of researchers to review the results of your test. You can either do a one-off test by test pricing model or a license. So we were, of course, I was interested in the license because I wanted to kind of spin this all up really quickly, and I was, again, concerned about the sort of the load on me as the person sort of doing this part-time. But unfortunately, it was expensive. It was about, let's say, an entry-level IT FTE salary a year. So, 75,000.
Wow.
Yeah. That was all you can eat. Yeah. Cost per test was between $50 for your first 3 tests, and then $100 for your next 4 tests, and right? But more concerning than the cost. I mean, that was concerning, obviously. That was kind of like a non-starter, right? But usertesting.com was not interested in signing a license agreement because they're kind of a big company, and then Yale's not, by far not the only game in town. Our copyright librarian looked over their terms and conditions and was like, we need to make sure that we are protecting the people who we direct to take these tests, particularly if we are funneling Yale community members to take these tests, to do this usability testing. We want to make sure that they're protected. And then there's just also sort of standard license language that we use when we sign licenses with big giant companies, same as we would for ProQuest or any other thing. So yeah, they were not interested in that. So forget usertesting.com. The next one, the next platform that I tested was UserZoom. So it's very similar. This one, they quoted me at about $35,000 a year, so cheaper, sort of. Same as usertesting.com, in-test analytics, on-staff review panels, test participants at your fingertips, all that. But still expensive. They were willing to sign a license agreement with us, which was really great. But the cost was still a non-starter. So I had to let that dream go. But it was fine because then I got to make this methodology and then present on it a bunch of times. So it all worked out. So I thought to myself, could I recreate this user testing platform experience myself? And I guess what I want to mention is with either UserZoom or usertesting.com, the setup is kind of like this. A participant is directed to a test. They're told to open the test in the participant side part of the platform. And so there's kind of like a little pop-up on top of whatever website that the participant is supposed to be testing. And that pop-up is what guides, it is the test. It guides the participant through the test. So I could do that, right? Sure. So Zoom was just kind of coming to sort of, I don't want to say fruition, that's bad. That's not what I mean. Zoom was kind of like taking over campus, let's put it that way. And this was crucial for my process because of the features that it offers. Automatic recording to the cloud, right? That was the big thing. If I could get someone into a Zoom session and then have them do stuff and have that session be recorded to the cloud for me to look at later, that's a game changer, right? Then I can schedule I can let my tests go out and schedule when I'm going to review them. I don't need to be there. The Zoom also lets you join before the host of a meeting, so it's like they could just go click a link and be automatically in a Zoom session, and it's recording, and I don't have to worry about it. Zoom is easy to download and install. So I noticed in the first kind of testing rounds of doing this that people were it just happened automatically. It took 2 seconds, not even, maybe half a second. It just wasn't confusing for most people. And even on mobile, right? I did not intend for people to be doing testing on mobile, but lo and behold, I handed out a link to a test, and all of a sudden I'm looking at a video of a a little rectangle, and the person's like, and they had just downloaded the Zoom app on their phone. Easy peasy. And it's easy to verify the settings. So like, you know, obviously you want to make sure that the session's recording. You want to make sure that their mic is on. You want to make sure that, you know, that they're not videotaping themselves, because we don't want to see their face. We don't do that kind of test. So this will look familiar. How many people have used Zoom? Yeah. Okay. So this is not a shocker, right? So you can see that the thing is recording here. You can see how to share your screen. Big giant green button, big giant call to action. You can see that when you're talking, that your mic is going. Very, very easy for people to identify that the settings are correct. So how do you get test participants into the recording session? Qualtrics. So we have a site license, as you probably all know, for Qualtrics at Yale. The Qualtrics survey is the link that you give to people to lead them into the Zoom session. The Qualtrics survey is the equivalent of that little pop-up I was talking about that User Testing and UserZoom used to guide participants through the steps of the test. You can also collect participant consent. So like, you know, you want to do everything above board, right? They can click through and agree the little agree checkbox and a whole list of things that we say, you know, we're going to record your voice and we're going to keep the recording for a year, but we're not going to share it with anyone, and you know, don't worry about it, and that kind of thing. And then of course, Qualtrics, you can build some survey questions into a survey. Imagine that, and create some visualizations out of that data as well. Okay, so this is where I switch to slides because for some reason they just don't want to do it in PowerPoint. Okay, so this is my husband demonstrating, my husband and my cat demonstrating how to use this method. Oh, hang on. So he's been given the Qualtrics survey link. That's him. He's at home. He's going to be mad that I showed you this. So obviously his computer screen went on and took video, and then he turned the video off. And you can hear him clicking around. And so he's going back to the survey. And this was the Zoom link that he used. And then this is the moment where I ask the participants to verify their settings. And so they have to go click through each of these and verify that it works. And those are required answers, so they can't move forward in the test without testing. So he just tested the mic to verify that it was working, so he can check off all of those settings. Okay, and so then the next part
Alright, let's see if this works.
So he's going to be testing the Columbia University blacklight discovery interface.
Please keep this anime open. Remember to think out loud about the test. Take a moment to look at this page. What do you think the purpose of this page is? There we go. Yeah.
He's not actually taking the test, not fully. I kind of wish I'd gotten video of him doing it all the way though, because it's really funny. So most of you guys aren't library people, but what he's testing is sort of can you do a complicated or sort of an advanced search type task in a particular interface, and how does that go, right? So we have a discovery service, a discovery interface that runs on Blacklight at Yale Library, and we were testing our peers' institutions and their implementations of Blacklight to inform how we would implement advanced search, right? So if we give the same task to a bunch of different people and ask them to do it and then sort of test their success at it, how does that go, where there's stumbling blocks, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's why this is so useful. And again, I mean, that's a lot of work, but if I can just leave a pile of URLs with a bowl of candy out and have people take one, especially if I offer a gift card, I can get all the tests that I want. More than I want, probably. Definitely. Well, hang on a second. All right. Okay. So I was mentioning that there's the comparative test, and I will show you. Survey. Actually, I won't show you the survey. I want to make sure we have time for questions, so we'll just keep going. But actually, this is what this screenshot is what we ended up with out of this advanced search. So we got out of the advanced search testing. So these and or nots, that's from Cornell. Add a row, that's also from Cornell. The results limiter is from Princeton. And Columbia, we actually have their code base, so this is also very much Columbia as well. So this is a best of breed. Let's see. So things that didn't go so well. So the you know that book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? Okay. So if you pretend that the URL to this particular test is the cookie, and then you put all those cookies out on a desk with a bunch of candy and a sign that says gift cards, they're going to take them and they're going to take the test and they're going to take it over and over. But what if you only use one Zoom link? What's going to happen? Yeah, and it's going to be a hot mess, right? So I had to figure that out really quickly. Don't do that. So this is where Qualtrics is kind of awesome, and we'll talk about other sort of surveying tools later. But Qualtrics, and I don't know all the different features and functionality of those, but what Qualtrics lets you do is really get granular with the way you set up your survey. So you can kind of direct things and move people around, and if you think this way, go here, and if you said that, go here. And so with these blocks, can you see this? Okay. So there's 3 blocks here. The setup block, which is all talking about like, hey, do you consent to letting us record? Please check your features, blah, blah, blah. That's very straightforward and linear, right? But then this block is the block that does 2 things. It sends you into a randomly assigned Zoom session, right? So I've actually created I think I created 4 or 5 different Zoom sessions, all dedicated to this particular test. And they are randomly shown to, just one session at a time, randomly shown to the person taking the survey. So it's kind of like load balancing people taking the survey at the same time, multiple people taking the survey at the same time. Then I also wanted to randomize which interface they were testing. So I didn't go, okay, now we're testing Columbia, and now we're testing Princeton, and now we're testing Cornell. They were randomly shown either Cornell or Princeton or Columbia, but then given the same task, which is the next block, right? So a little bit of a complicated, semi-complicated setup to sort of ease my overall burden of trying to do this test. So the other thing I did was screening. If you're an alumni or you're not anything related to Yale, then I'm sorry, you cannot take the test. This was sort of to help with publicizing the test on the library's Facebook page, which also didn't really go that well because turns out mostly alumni really like the library's Facebook page, not fellow kids. Not sure why. So again, this is another shot of the randomized delivery into different Zoom sessions. So each of these represents a different Zoom session that the person would come into. So after the test was done, the ITS UX was kind enough to let me have the login for their Optimal Workshop account. And in there, I use a tool called Reframer. And basically, my background is in cataloging. I started as a catalog assistant here at Yale many years ago. So I basically coded all of the sessions, the transcriptions of the sessions, and then sort of granularized those the statements in the sessions and coded them. So, for instance, if someone was on task 1 and they were like, ugh, right? So then I would code that particular line, task 1. I would tag it task 1, and I would tag it negative, or tag it doesn't like this, or something like that. Also, if they were doing task 1 and they couldn't do it and they couldn't complete it, I would fail. So, but, as you can imagine, that takes a ton of work and a ton of time. But you get really great visualizations at the end. So as I mentioned, sending out the test through social media on Facebook, not so great. There's a high bounce rate for tests. So like people would get into the test and get confused and then leave. I can't remember exactly how many people actually tried to take the test. I want to say it was like somewhere in the 60 people, but I only ended up with about 20 viable tests. The technical setup, even though it was easy, it's still a hurdle. Some people didn't quite understand it. The sending the test to outside researchers didn't really work because a lot of times, so we were trying to test, I tried to use this methodology for testing our special collections request service called Aeon. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. So we were trying to send links to tests like this to people outside of the Yale network, and their email account their email account would kind of scrub the link, and so they couldn't take it. The other thing you miss, and this is true for my method or any other sort of remote unmoderated usability testing, you don't get that interaction where you can say, what do you mean? You made this comment, you said this thing, you made this face, right? So we're not recording faces, so we can't see the visual cues coming from the participant. So you don't get that extra sort of value add of like following up. Another thing, so I was advertising this in the nave, the main hall of the Sterling Memorial Library, and a faculty person was not happy that we had a sign that had an Amazon logo on it. So they were not happy about that. Again, I had to load balance the participant test traffic with multiple Zoom sessions, so that got a little complicated. There's a lot of data to collate and code. And sometimes participants wouldn't use like an actual headset. They would just use, they would open their laptop and the native mic inside the laptop would be what they use. And so sometimes that was hard. You'd hear them, my husband was doing something similar in the video you saw, and you could hear him like tapping more than you can actually hear his voice. And the process is not web accessible. So it was not designed with people using assistive devices in mind. So a variation on this method, you could do the whole thing, but then sit in on the Zoom session and moderate it instead of having the Qualtrics survey. Or you could have the Qualtrics survey up and have the participant answer some of those questions, but also have the opportunity to ask the follow-ups that you might not be able to do if you were doing remote unmoderated. In-person moderated and scheduled, so you could use Zoom to record the session, but you could have the person sitting right next to you. So really, the method is really being used just for recording purposes for review of the session later. Instead of a survey and testing an interface, you could have people do a card sort or some other kind of exercise, or a first click test. We did this with our research guides, which had a giant list of subjects on the landing page, and we had students sorting the different research guide titles by subject to try to find out what their mental model of the organization of subjects was. And it didn't match what we had at all. So that was really helpful. Another feature available in Zoom is screen annotation. Has anybody tried that? You use so you could do that probably to highlight certain things, or if you could, but I don't know what how big of a hurdle it is. You could ask people to sort of draw on the screen for you as a part of the test. I have not done that yet. I haven't found a use for it, but something you could do. You could, this is the annotate thing here. That's how you would access that. I haven't tried like WebEx or other things, or Hangouts or anything like that. Zoom has worked really well. And I haven't tried other surveying tools, so SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, whatever. I know Qualtrics and it's free, so, but it is not super intuitive to use. So when I presented this before, that's like usually the first question is, can we please use Google Forms instead of Qualtrics? And of course, it's just that I can only speak to the Qualtrics way of doing it. So that is mostly it, but I have a couple of announcements. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., I will be presenting with Tabor Lightfoot and Sylvia Perez on our new UX research lab, which is in the basement of Sterling Memorial Library. So please, if you plan on attending tomorrow, come to our talk at 2. And we have a community of practice, a UX community of practice here at Yale. Email this address to introduce yourself, say hi, and join. Or you can just email me directly, and I will add you to the mailing list in the Slack channel. We meet once a month. I think we're meeting next week at lunchtime. And we just get together and talk about UX. And this is for people doing that kind of work or interested in it. And students are also welcome to join. And now